Hi, I'm Christy here with HRT. I'm just going to go over my garden and see what's going on. Over here at the entrance to our garden is some squash. This is a zucchini. It's a variety that is good for both summer and winter squash. In the summer you can eat it for like you would a regular zucchini, and if you leave it on the vine it will harden up and then it becomes more of like a winter squash. Most of the things that we grow, we try and grow for storage. To eat during the winter months and that kind of stuff. Since we're down here, I also planted some Carolina roaster squash. So those will hopefully trellis up on the hog pails we put up there. I have a little herb garden over here. This is like a wild raspberry that I just plucked out of the ground. It was a purple raspberry, but it's very tart and very juicy. So I am growing it here in this pot and it's actually being very productive this year, so we'll see how it goes. I have some herbs for like my kitchen and stuff here, some oregano, thyme, and some lavender growing up there. Over here I have a red raspberry plant just in a bucket because I didn't really have a place to put this one, so it just kind of hangs out here. It's propagating itself down on the bottom. This is the entrance to our garden. I have here some watermelon and some Brussels sprouts that were gifted to me. I've never had luck with Brussels sprouts, but maybe this year will be a little bit different. On this edge here we have some apple trees. These apple trees have never really been that productive. They also don't taste very good, so I'll mostly use that for like applesauce if we get it. We did have a little baby deer that was in here enjoying them last year, but yeah. Over here under this net that's kind of shielding the birds from my blueberries, I had some tomato plants that I didn't know what to do with and wasn't going to use, so I just kind of put them there because I can't help myself to see a plant go to waste. And I don't like to put them in the compost pile just to I know they're gonna die, so I have to do something with them. This is my row of onions. I actually just weeded that like a week ago, which you can't really tell, but I did weed it. I grew them from seed this year instead of getting the little bulbs. Some people say that you get bigger bulbs that way. I don't know, it's an experiment for us. In this bed here is my broccoli, cauliflower, my brassicas, cabbage. I actually think my broccoli, even though small, is ready to harvest. If you zoom in on here, you'll see I think the flowerets are starting to open up, which means I should probably pick it, even though I was hoping for a little bit more of a substantial head. I think that's what I'm going to get this year. But this is actually the first year I've actually gotten any sort of head on my broccoli, so I'm pretty excited about that. So you will see some cabbages in here, broccoli, there is some cauliflower. The cauliflower doesn't have any heads or anything on it yet. I did put some marigolds in here to try and deter some pests. For the most part, this was covered up until like last week. I took the covering off just because the plants were growing out of the covering to keep the cabbage moths and stuff away, which I think has worked because the cabbage moths and stuff haven't really touched these at all. I see something ate my Brussels sprouts last night over here, which I think is either a groundhog or a rabbit. I'm not sure. One of each. One of the other. Who knows? But it also ate my cabbages over there. So it looks like it started to notice a little bit of my broccoli there. We'll see what happens. This over here is my bean trellis. It's Cherokee Trail of Tears. There is a little bit of volunteer tomatoes in there. This is my first year growing these, so we will see how that goes. But they seem to be doing well so far. This is my carrot patch. I had problems with germination this year, mostly because of our spring. It was so wet and cold that the garden really struggled the first part of the spring. So I did not get a very good germination, but I hope to plant some more like late summer, and hopefully I'll get some before the winter time. Over here is my tomatoes for canning. I did mostly San Marzanos. I grew those from seed. I also have some peppers in with my San Marzanos and some basil. They say the basil is supposed to enhance the flavor of the tomatoes as they're growing. So we will see about that. They are supposed to be, this particular variety said they were determinate tomatoes, so I just put them in the cages. The indeterminate tomatoes I have over there, and they're on a hog panel, just because they get so big. Right here is my dragon tongue green beans. These are the kids' favorite green beans. If I can get them to eat a green bean, this is the green bean they're going to eat. I like them. Their color is striking. They're easier to find on the vine because they're not just plain green. They have the little purple stripes in there. And they have a really good crunch, and just the quality of the bean seems pretty like hearty. I think they don't get mushy. Over here is some cucumbers I planted. I had my cucumbers were not doing well that I grew from seed. So I went out and bought some, and then 2 days later I came out here to plant them, and my cucumbers were looking a lot better. And I think that's just because the weather had shifted and they were happier. So I didn't know what to do with them, so I planted them here. Over here is my zucchini. I grew that from seed as well. I did the gray striped zucchini because I just like the look of them better than the typical green zucchini. And they seem to be enjoying the warmer, hotter weather. Over here is my blueberries. I have nets over them to keep the birds off because they should be ripening really within this week, I think. This plant was just bush was so big I can't cover it. But here is some catnip I'm growing to hopefully sell at our little farm stand. And here I have some chocolate mint. The kids like this if they're going to have tea in the winter time. They like the chocolate mint.
I love chocolate mint.
Over here is my strawberry patch, which is heavily full of weeds. We're ending really strawberry season now anyway. I plan on just pulling this whole patch out. I think it's a strawberry variety I have, which I'm not sure what it is, but was just never very productive. So our strawberry season, whether I weed this patch or not, has been kind of minimal and sad.
Good piece.
Good. But here are some of my eggplants, which are finally starting to thrive, and they've had some pest problems. So here's my volunteer tomato that I can't possibly get rid of because it's growing in my garden. Over here is my trellis for my cucumbers. So not all of these, I see a squash bug on my cucumber right now, hiding under there. Most of these, I'm pretty sure maybe all of these are pickling cucumbers, because that is what we use most of our cucumbers for, is pickles or fresh eating. So I did plant some dill intermittently in with my cucumbers. One, it's supposed to enhance the flavor of the cucumbers, and also you need it for the pickles. So here's my lone celery plant that did not bolt on me, so it can stay a little bit longer. Over here is my salad greens, which are kind of getting a little bit lengthy and need to be eaten by some kids. And this is our asparagus patch. We need to get in there and weed that, but that's pretty much done for the season. Mostly we just used it for fresh eating. I think we made a couple sauteed asparagus a couple of times, but for the most part we just had enough for fresh eating, which I almost prefer to eat them fresh. I think they're much tastier and they're very juicy and good. Over here is one of our rows of peas. They're Vivi's favorite thing to eat ever. So I try to grow as many peas as I can because she loves them so much. Yeah.
So many peas.
One issue I'm having with my peas though is because they're getting so big and some of the high winds we've had, they're breaking and falling over. Yeah. There's a whole section actually behind us here of peas that you see have fallen to the ground because they just got worn, they got taken over by the wind and unfortunately fell to the ground. So I'm actually very upset about this pea situation I got going on here because we won't have the harvest I was quite expecting or hoping for. As we make our way over here, this is where I put my indeterminate tomatoes because they grow up so big and try to contain them a little. I put them on the hog panels and then I'll use these tomato clamps just to kind of clamp them up against the hog panel. I'm starting to get some blooms on them, but and this is as well I did the basil in between to try and one, get more basil and two, to enhance the flavor of the tomato. On this other side here is where I did a lot of my squash. This is a combination of like butternut squash, Hubbard squash, buttercup. All like the winter squashes for the most part are on this section here. The hope is that they will trellis over just like into this grassy patch here and they can kind of go wild and free and it's less mowing we have to do. So. Here is some cabbages I had, which in the last couple of days have got totally decimated by something, which I think is my groundhog or rabbit that is visiting my garden. But it really has had quite the feast on my cabbages there.
Well, whatever it is, we should name him Chunky.
Because he probably is chunky. There's some intermittent potato plants, and those were just volunteers from a few years ago when we did potatoes. They say once you plant potatoes, you will always have potatoes because you can't find them all. So they just regrow. So Vivi's trying to gather what she can of our peas because they are sad now that they fell over. But that's the main garden we have there. Over here is like a little extra part of the garden. We did these cattle panel hoops here to try and see if the stuff would actually like trellis up on there. And in hindsight, maybe I should have done like beans and stuff like that, but I had all these cantaloupe and watermelon, so I just put those here. I'm worried about the weight on there, but we will see what happens. Very nice. We'll go over your garden in 1 minute. Over here is the garlic that my husband plants every year. Right now we do have some scapes forming, so we'll have to take care of that this week. What I normally do is I make a pesto out of these, but you can also use them, like chop them up and add them to olive oil and put them in like a like ice cube tray and then just pop them out as you need them for like an extra garlic. Instead of using fresh garlic, you can use the scapes. They add a good garlicky flavor to everything, so. Over here it's actually a row of blueberries that I put some flowers in here for just like some extra color. And a couple years ago, I put this catnip in here. Yeah, the cats do love it. Word of warning though, this will spread everywhere and take over your whole garden. So just be wary if you plant catnip anywhere. Probably a container would probably be the best thing to do because I really have to keep an eye on this to make sure it doesn't go too crazy. I had a couple leftover tomato plants, so I planted them in there. But if you want to come over and look at this little blueberry bush, it's got quite a lot of blueberries on it for the little itty bitty size of the plant. Here, this plant here is chamomile, so that is flowering as you see. Luke's picking some of that. We mostly use that for tea mostly just only tea. I was going to try and do like a fair amount of like infused honey this year. So I might try like a chamomile one. I might try, I'd like to try vanilla and maybe an elderberry one, we'll see. Because as we see here, these are our elderberry bushes. The ones we actually have planted. Turns out there's like 3 million of them on our property, but these are ones that before we really knew what elderberry was, we bought elderberry trees or bushes. And then once they started like flowering and stuff, we realized we have them everywhere on our property. So it was just kind of one of those funny things that I still laugh about today, because it's like, why did we buy these when we have like literally a zillion of them? But they are being very productive this year. As you can see, all of the flowers and stuff. And that is one thing I want to do with my honey, is infuse some of the elder flower. Just gives it a little bit more of a medicinal purpose. Over here, also something that I would probably plant in a container next time is my apple mint, which we love the apple mint. It's one of my favorite plants in the whole garden because I just love to put it in tea and that kind of stuff. And it has like a furry kind of leaf, which I like, but I really, really, really like it in ginger ale. Just crush up a little bit of it and put it in ginger ale. It gives it kind of like this fresh taste. And then I have a couple of tomato plants over here as well, because I can't not plant a plant that I have that I don't have any room for. But these apple mint is also crowding out. There is a blueberry plant somewhere in there that I need to dig out. Over here is some black elderberry bushes. They really have not grown that much since we planted them. But with elderberry, you're supposed to have a couple different varieties next to each other. So we did this. It clearly needs to be weeded heavily, but it really has never grown much since we got it. This big long patch here is our red raspberries. I don't know of the variety that we have. It was gifted to me from a friend. It never really has a very big spring production. It does, however, have usually a pretty large fall production. The only problem with that is sometimes the berries don't get ripe in time for the season to end, and if a frost hits them, then they just turn to mush. And so, but for the most part, I can get a decent yield of this in the fall time. Spring, not so much, but for my spring berries over here, so I have Fall Gold and Princess Anne, a variety of yellow raspberries. These, especially this year, are very productive. I will have quite a few berries in the next couple weeks, and my hope is to make jam and that kind of stuff out of these. The kids prefer the yellow raspberries. They just have much more of a higher sugar content. So for them, it's more like kind of like a candy raspberry than it is a tart, sour raspberry. That fairly large bumblebee is a good entrance into our beehives. Right now, I currently have one beehive. My other beehive did not make it through the winter, but this beehive has survived 2 winters now. It has already swarmed once this year, but because of the weather and stuff, I did not get in there to do a split because it was just so cold and miserable this spring that I felt like if I went and split them, it probably would not have survived. So this year I'm just kind of letting them do their thing. I already put one super on for honey, which is half full. I'll have to put another super on in the next probably week or so. These bees are more aggressive than bees I've had in the past. Bees I've had in the past, I could literally sit with my chair right in front of the beehive and just watch them go in and out. These ones don't like us to get any closer than this. So here is like a garden that I have made for the bees, and it has some medicinal herbs and stuff in there as well. So mostly it's lemon balm and bee balm, which is red. I have the red bee balm. The bees love both of those things. I also put some other medicinal plants in there along with the weeds, but I can't really get over here to weed it because the bees don't like me being over here. But I have like the toothache plant, which you can, if you have a sore tooth, you could rub on your gums and it will numb your gums and tooth area for like hours. So I grew some of that. I figured that would be nice in like in case of an emergency, or if you wake up with a toothache or something like that, you could try that and maybe sustain you till you can get to the dentist in the morning. But the bee balm here, I usually make tea out of it. It has a kind of like a spiky red flower that comes out. The Oswego tea was named after the bee balm because it originated in Oswego County, which is where we are. So I just feel like it's kind of like a little bit special to this area. So over here is our potato patch. We decided to do the potatoes in containers only for the fact that we were doing them in the ground. One, we weren't getting a very good yield, and two, it's just hard to dig them all out, and it seemed like pests and stuff were just getting into the potatoes. So we did multiple containers. Probably should use bigger containers, but that's what we had. So we're gonna add a little bit more mulch to these, and we'll let you know at the end of the season what kind of yield we get. All right. Over here we have some squashy planted. I think they're having a little bit of transplant shock right now. Because we just planted them like last week. We ended up having to go and buy some from our local nursery because our chickens decided to scratch up all the ones that we had growing already. So in here is butternut, acorn, spaghetti squash in this little area here, away from the chickens in our little orchard we have. In our orchard here we have some apple trees, plum tree, peach tree, and more apple trees down there. These are all fairly young trees. We just planted them last year. This one actually had like 5 apples on it, but I think we're just going to have to pull those off because they're weighing the tree down too much. So, thank you for joining me on my garden tour today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.